I'm Melanne Verveer, and I'm just delighted to be here today to be able to moderate this panel on unlocking the entrepreneurial ambition of women. You know, one of the great challenges the world over is how do we grow economies? How do we create jobs? How do we ensure shared prosperity? It is a fact that no country can get ahead if it leaves half of its people behind, its women, and certainly no economy can prosper if women are locked out of full economic participation. Today, there is a plethora of research and data, as no time before, that enables us to understand that to achieve the economic expansion we all seek, to decrease the poverty that we want to see decreased and eradicated, to ensure inclusive prosperity, we need to unlock a vital source of growth that can power our economies for decades to come. And that vital source is women. I want to lay out just a few statistics to give you a sense of the power of the potential, and we will be discussing some of the barriers that are still impeding the possibilities. Women-owned small and medium-sized businesses are engines of growth. The World Bank calls SMEs the missing middle that is so vital to creating the kind of inclusive prosperity that our world needs. In the United States, for example, women-owned businesses have contributed nearly $3 trillion to the economy, and that is growing. Women, in the ways that they spend their income, enable a double dividend to occur. They invest 90% of their earnings in food, in health, in education, in the kinds of things that reinvest in the community and essentially raise the standard of living for themselves and for their communities. It has a multiplier effect. A study not too long ago published by Booz & Company called The Third Billion shows that there are 1 billion women poised to make an enormous contribution to the economies around the world, to rival what India and China represent, if they are empowered to have their potential tapped. And women are vital to agriculture. In many of the developing countries, they are the backbone of the economy. They comprise the majority of the small farmers, yet they do not have equal access to the resources that they need to be much more productive. And there is an FAO study that demonstrates how vital women are in the agriculture sector and how much the resources that they need to be enabled for greater productivity need to be equalized. And what the study shows is when that equality takes place in resources, and we're talking about food, we're talking about seeds and fertilizer, we're talking about training, we're certainly talking about land rights, which are absolutely crucial. They can increase their individual yields by 20 to 30% when that happens, and in the aggregate, they can ensure that the numbers of undernourished people around the world is reduced by 100 million to 150 million people. Now that's astonishing. That's what's in the FAO report, and that's the impact of some of what we're going to discuss here this afternoon. But everywhere female entrepreneurs face barriers that hinder their ability to start or grow their businesses. They confront discriminatory laws, regulations, customs. In some places, they can't inherit, they can't own property. And everywhere, they don't have the access they need to have to training, to mentors, to networks, to markets. Capital is very, very difficult for most, and increasingly technology. We're seeing a gender gap both in mobile technology and certainly in the internet. So what we want to do this afternoon is talk about how we can indeed enable women worldwide to unleash their entrepreneurial ambition. I have been privileged both most recently as the U.S. Ambassador for Global Women's Issues in co-founding Vital Voices, with which I spent many years working with women around the world to really understand how serious this challenge is and how extraordinarily important it is that we put our minds and heads and abilities together to really unleash the potential that this represents. And I remember one day being in Latin America, and a woman was telling me how she struggled so much. She had a vision of where she wanted to go. She had a market niche, if anybody did. She had everything going for her, but she couldn't access the credit that she needed. And she told me the day that that happened, she felt like a bird that flew out of a cage. And that's what we're talking about today, really enabling more of this kind of entrepreneurial activity to be possible. And so we have with us today an extraordinary group of women. Right smack in the middle of you are two entrepreneurs. One who was able to start a business and grow it into one that is today a successful export business. We have a woman with us on the panel who is a lawyer dealing with ensuring land rights and land tenure rights for women in agriculture, something that's vitally important. We have another who is enabling women among her clientele of Root Capital to really create the kinds of conditions and make capital available, which is one of the greatest challenges in this space. And we also have another entrepreneur who has also developed a tool to create efficiencies and transparencies through technology into supply chains, something that increasingly is vitally needed to entrepreneurs. So I'm going to ask each of them to very briefly, one sentence, two max, to just tell us who they are, and then we're going to have a conversation, and hopefully you will join in at some point. Comfort, do you want to start?
Hi, everyone. My name is Comfort Adjahoe, the founder and CEO of Agbe Company Limited from Ghana, West Africa.
Hi, everybody. My name is Rosemary Amondi, CEO, founder of Tracesoft Limited, a supply chain information management and analytics company working out of Nairobi, Kenya. It's my first Skoll forum, and I'm really, really excited to be here, to be among people who are doing really, really great things. I'm humbled. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Catherine Gill from Root Capital. I'm also humbled to be on this panel with amazing women who are trying to change the ecosystem and allow those women to participate economically. Root Capital is a social investment fund that's providing financing to small agricultural businesses that are locked out of the banking sector.
Hello, my name is Hirat Gurma. I'm an attorney and a land tenure specialist at Landesa. Landesa is a global nonprofit that works on securing land rights for the poor.
So we're going to start with our entrepreneur. Comfort had a vision. She had an idea of what she wanted to do. And I think since we're here discussing entrepreneurial ambition, it would be worth starting with someone who was certainly possessed of that ambition, had to make her way, and not an easy journey, but is today extremely successful. So maybe we can start, Comfort, with you telling us a little bit about how you got where you are.
Okay. Thank you very much. It's a great honor for me to be here today to share part of my life or my journey with you. The beginning of all this is my personal attributes. I happen to be a very curious person, very focused, perseverance, and emotional intelligence, and a sense of giving back, even when I didn't even start it. I have that at the back of my mind. And I was lucky to have people who saw this potential in me. And these are mentors that I have down the line. And that encouraged me to start this business with 2 pliers, helping somebody to work string beads. And when I finished stringing those beads, I feel like I enjoy this. So I'm not going to stop it right there. So I use those 2 pliers, visiting people's homes. I see your necklace. This necklace is nice, but the finishing is not good. I can do it better. Can I come to your house? And yeah, they opened their homes for me. And with those 2 pliers, from 1993, today has turned to a successful business because I've moved from beads to handicrafts, then shea butter, where I found women where my passion is. And now those 2 pliers produce a cosmetic, shea butter cosmetic factory.
And you directly or indirectly employ hundreds of women?
Yes, indirectly, and thousands of women are getting something doing to supply, in the supply chain of this company. And we export to US, Japan, Sweden, Australia, and individuals in the UK.
So besides your personal attributes, which are obviously considerable, what interventions had the most impact on moving you forward, making your dream possible?
I'm a very observant person. I observe situations. I don't look down upon anything, wherever I am, every environment. Anything I see around, I see a finished product coming out of anything that I see around. And I want to make a living out of it because I have a lonely journey, and all that I do is make sure you do something and earn a living. We are talking about somebody who was very little and lost the father who would take care of her. So the journey was about 40 years as at last month. So I don't look back, I just want to make a living at every point in time.
Comfort, there are others like you who have similar perseverance,
Yes.
Similar observation perhaps, but need that nudge, need that somebody, whether it's with the credit they need or whether it's mentoring or whether it's a training program. Were you able to do all of this without any of that kind of intervention, or did you have some assist along the way?
You know, when I started with the beads, the lady who taught me the beading, when she was not getting no more orders, she encouraged me that not only you can string beads, but you can teach people. So I do teaching along the line. That gives me capital to cushion the business. So whatever I start, I have the finish in mind. So I focus on getting to, no matter what it will take me. So by teaching schools, I mean, even children where they learn how to crafts in their schools, I go from school to school, from one school, then they introduce me to another school, and then another school, and this mentor continued introducing me. Then I met another mentor who also he forced me to make sure I register it. And then another one who was into product development helped me to move into the handicrafts and do market research, understand the product line. And then I came to meet, I think this I mean, actually, I wasn't limiting this to myself. I keep engaging people that you can also do this, you can also do this, and together we do it. So I keep enjoying that I'm also creating something that is involving other people, reaching homes, because if I take a young person who is working with me, I get to know the parents. I want to know where he's coming from, if there's anything I can help in that area. If I take a married woman, I get to know the husband to know is there anything that the husband can support? Is there something that he can contribute that he doesn't know?
So utilizing everybody's skill sets. So a true entrepreneurial spirit.
Yes.
Let's move to Hirut, because land rights are so important to women, particularly in agriculture. In many ways, it's the gateway to economic opportunity, and yet it can be so difficult. Explain to us why this matters so much.
Okay. As most of you know, land is a critical asset for rural communities. It's a source of food, it's a source of shelter, it's a source of livelihood, legal and cultural identity, as well as status. So it represents a lot. So for those who don't have land rights within a rural community, their options are very much limited. The situation for women is particularly concerning because of the feminization of both poverty and the feminization of agriculture. So you have women, as was stated earlier, they are overrepresented among the poor, and they are also the primary producers, and yet they don't have this necessary access to be able to benefit from their contributions. This despite the fact that we know that where they have had this access, where women do have secure rights to land, they are more empowered, they are more likely to engage in other opportunities because they're coming from a place of empowerment. They are likely to take more risks, which is inherent in engaging in business, for instance, because of the improved sense of security. They are also better positioned because of the power dynamics, and the shift in the power dynamic allow women to feel like they have more leverage to be able to bargain. They're also in a position where, as again was stated earlier, to invest. I mean, why would one invest the little that they have into their land if there's uncertainty about what tomorrow will bring? So it's a cost-benefit analysis that all of us engage in when making decisions. So for all these sorts of reasons, it becomes really challenging for women. And then we know that where they do have these rights, they're also more likely to have influence in intra-household decision. So, and where they do have that sort of control within the household as to what crop is grown, what to do with the proceeds, then they're better positioned to help their families because of this multiplier effect, because they then have the necessary control to be able to make decisions that influence their family.
So why is it so difficult for them to procure these rights?
There are barriers, both cultural barriers and legal barriers that make it difficult for women to secure these rights. I think one thing I should note before going further is to say that when we speak of women here, we're talking of women as a group, but really they have different social characteristics that define their experiences. So some women are better positioned than others. Also, when we talk about legal barriers, we're not just looking at the statutory or the formal laws most people think. We're looking much broader than that. So the customary practices on the ground. That is often what governs land rights in the developing world, much more so than the statutory. And it's usually a hybrid of the customary, the statutory, and in some situations, the religious laws. And it's obstacles that come along in all of these areas.
So we'll come back and go into some of the solutions, which I know will be of interest. But before we do that, Catherine, obviously, capital is another big issue, and it's got to be an extremely difficult challenge, particularly in rural areas. Tell us how root capital works, and how do you operate in places where you do have a lot of small farmers, but you've got the aggregators or the co-ops also. Sure. So explain to us how your ability to reach them operates.
Absolutely, yeah. So the feminization of agriculture on the one hand, and then the total inequality of access to capital. It was implicit in what you said in your opening remarks, but it's a statistic that's worth bringing onto the stage here, is that of all rural credits, it's about 10% of that is going to women. So there's just a massive inequality there, and yet women are doing most of the rural work, right? So what do you do about this? So Root Capital is a rural livelihoods organization. We're trying to grow rural prosperity, and then so through access to finance for aggregating businesses, right? Businesses that aggregate a few hundred to a few thousand farmers, smallholder farmers, a few acres of land. These are the missing middle, right, as you said, and the rural missing middle, which is the sort of the worst part. So within that, you have to look at the gender inequalities and say, well, what can we do with businesses that are providing economic opportunities to women sort of up and down that supply chain. And so that was something that when we started 15 years ago, we weren't asking specifically, but as we've kind of gone on, realized that we needed to ask that question much more specifically. So about 2 years ago, started a process of sort of building out the metrics within our portfolio so that we can understand the kind of gender inclusivity, if you will, the degree of gender inclusion within our portfolio businesses. The mechanism that we came up with is about 9 questions that are looking at, so all of our loan officers are going to be evaluating businesses along all of these criteria, and they are looking actually across, so it's leadership is one, but if you're kind of only looking at leadership, you're not going to do a lot of deals, unfortunately, and so there's a lot of economic opportunity within that business that we thought it was important to capture. So we're looking at leadership, but we're also looking at employment, and we're looking at membership, the supplier base, the consumer base, and we're also looking at access to credit within from the rural enterprise, the access to training, things like that. So sort of trying to really capture in a composite score the gender inclusion level. And so you go through that process, every business is rated as part of the overall underwriting, and they get a score. And anything that's an A or above in that score, we consider gender inclusive. So thinking about that with a much stronger light on it, kind of like this one, over the past 2 years, about $87 million of capital flowing to businesses that meet that criteria. So that's a start. About 100 businesses, 87 million to about 100 businesses, about 30 countries, and 20 or so value chains. And so what that allows us to do is then say, can we sort of look at that data? Can we understand where the opportunities are? Some of them you know intuitively, or you knew before you had to look at the data, like Shea is such a powerful economic opportunity for women, and some are less obvious. And so it's allowed us to sort of understand some of the value chains and where some of the opportunities are. It's allowed us to really see some of the creative disruptors and people who are working in male-dominated value chains and think about products and tailoring the products in order to sort of refine the model. It's largely the same. They're not women's products. There are not women's strategies. There is a rural livelihood strategy in which women have to play a role, or else we're not going to get it. We're not going to feed the planet.
So we know that capital by itself may not always solve the problems. What's the ecosystem that you have found really is necessary to ensure that the entrepreneur in agriculture, in most of these cases, is successful at whatever level?
Yeah, I mean, you can't be in the rural credit business if you're not also in the training business, right? So capacity, and this is where I feel like the rubber meets the road, maybe even more. I mean, there's not a lot of, in the communities where we're working, there's not overt credit discrimination per se, but there is a capacity gap that's leaving some of the more gender inclusive or women-run businesses behind. They're catching up. to their male counterparts, both on the technical side in terms of the agronomic practices and also on the business skills side. And I feel like this comes out in like the Vital Voices report that I'm sure you were involved in, and some of these ecosystem reports, and just that capacity gap and how important that is. So, you know, we run about a $5 million technical training program alongside of our credit. I mean, we're sort of a bank, but we also have quite a big business at this point, training several hundred businesses every year in how to run their finances, cash flow planning, and right, Comfort, you know how important this stuff is, and how to prepare a loan application, how to do a capital project for, you know, the creation of a warehouse or, you know, other facility, and so that's absolutely essential. I mean, we couldn't pretend to be really working on rural poverty if we weren't already in that business. And if I might just say one thing about that, what's interesting, and one of the things that I think maybe the sort of the gender lens investment community hasn't thought enough about, and I think is an opportunity, is looking, I mean, yes, Rosemary and Comfort give us, I mean, leadership is the goal, you know, is sort of the ultimate. But there's a lot of businesses where you see the middle management emerging, and there's sort of an interesting, I think, pipeline development thing that's happening within many of these the businesses where the sort of female accountant or female agronomist or female, and that there's some really interesting creative disruption that's happening at that level. And I think the training into that that sort of professional management is that can be very powerful, and that's maybe a lever that we've underappreciated.
Because they're so essential to working with all the people to whom they make those small loans.
That's exactly right. They're essential in two ways. So they're pipeline leadership, right? They could be the next CEO, but they're also high touch. So, you know, we're about to release an issue brief, and this is one of the things we're talking about, and we refer to them as the hidden influencers, right? These are women who have sort of high touch opportunities to influence throughout the value chain, most often, you know, across their colleagues for sure, their buyers, and the producers. So great example, a woman that we include a case study of her in this issue brief. Her name is Odalis, and she's an agronomist for a very male-dominant coffee producing organization in Peru. And she was the daughter of many brothers, and she was the only one who didn't get any land. She went to a technical sewing college, and then she was just kept on at her father saying, I really want to be in the coffee business along with the rest of my family. And so he finally gave her 3/4 of an acre of land that he considered unfarmable. And she took it, and he was producing about 2 quintales, about 75 pounds, 2 quintales of coffee. In the past 3 years, she's increased that from 2 to 18, and now she's the lead agronomist for her. And now all of her brothers are coming to her to find out what is the best, you know, latest agronomy. I mean,
And how does her father explain this?
Right. Well, I mean, he takes all the credit now. Yeah. But I mean, this woman's a revolutionary. She's a creative disruptor. Totally. But she's 26 years old, you know, and she's not management, but now she, you know, and she's going out and she's teaching everybody else how to farm their land. So that's something that's pretty exciting. And I think if we're smart about our tools, we can get women like Odalis to change the world too.
So that's a perfect segue into what Rosemary is doing as an entrepreneur. When I heard about her business, I thought this is truly visionary. And she is using tools, technology, information technology specifically, to ensure that supply chains can be better monitored and there can be transparency and all of the things that go with it. So where did you get this idea to do this? And what difference does it make? Why is it important to be doing this?
Right. Thank you, Melanie. The journey all started about 6.5 years ago. And I was working at the time, actually 7 years ago to be precise. I was working with an organization called GS1, which is a global organization that works on barcoding standards. Mm-hmm. Some of you may have heard of it. So I was the general manager for GS1 in Kenya. And at the time, there was a bit of a crisis. Horticulture is pretty much our biggest GDP contributor. Kenya, by the way, in fact, a lot of Eastern African countries, because of the great climate, we export a lot of horticulture into the European Union and a little bit into the US as well. So at the time, you know, the whole horticultural industry was in crisis. And the crisis was brought about by new regulations that had been put in place by the EU around full traceability of foods going into the EU. So all of a sudden, everybody was running around saying, what are we going to do? The industry is going to crash. And the industry itself supports a lot of families, because the way the supply chains work is that you've got this exporter who's exporting tons of French beans or tomatoes to the UK or to Belgium, but sources this from smallholder farms in the rural areas. So the trickle-down effect in terms of you know, who it would affect was really going to be the smallholder farmer. And so then eventually, you know, the government got the rules, and you know, there was Europe gap, global gap, so many gaps. And so all of a sudden you've got these chains that are facing these new regulations, and they have to comply with them by some deadline. One was 2010, 2009, and multitude of regulations, tons of technical documentation to read through. So it was a nightmare. Everybody was running around trying to figure out. So it occurred to me that there had to be one thing that if we could do would kind of mitigate all these technical barriers that were coming into play for our export markets. And the one thing, when I looked at all the things that, you know, the markets were talking about, was the ability to actually be able to know where the product is coming from, how it was produced, what you used, you know, when you produced the product, the pesticides, minimum residual levels. So at some point, it really boiled down to information. You know, the consumer wanted information about the product that he was consuming. And, you know, when you think about everything that you know, that happened, right at the time also there was the outbreaks, the E. coli, you know, the spinach contamination, you know, that led to shutdown of, you know, entire businesses. So there was the risks as well. So on one hand, you know, the market is saying, I want to be able to know whether this product is sustainable. Are they employing child labor? So there was the ethical standards on one hand, and then there was the technical issues to do with risk management in the supply chain. So I basically, you know, at the time, you know, we had a conference, the first food safety conference in Kenya, which I organized within GS1, and I met, you know, the first partner that I had, and we started talking. I said, you know, what we probably need is just an information management tool that we could use to assist both exporters and growers to collect and share the information about what they're doing. And if we could avail this to a platform like, for example, the internet, then, you know, that would go a long way to mitigate this. So in a long-winded way, that's pretty much, there's been a lot more around that, but that's pretty much.
So did the customers come fast, or was it still a struggle to explain why this was important?
Yes, there was a bit of a struggle. Actually, that's an understatement. There was a huge struggle because, for one, you know, explaining the whole concept around managing information and collecting information about products and how they're produced and why it's important was a bit difficult, especially at producer level. At the buyer and market level, it was concepts like traceability are pretty much common, everyday terms, but, try explaining that to a producer somewhere in central Kenya, and you get this blank stares of what are you talking about? Where do you start? So it involved quite a bit of education, getting people to understand that you don't just need to do this because the market has said they will not take your products, but it could be actually what elevates you to the next level, not just in terms of protecting the market that we're definitely going to lose if we don't do this, but also market access in terms of reaching out and getting into new markets. So it took a bit of doing. The other challenge was just trying to figure out the business model, because my thinking was, we're going to create this platform where everybody's going to push in information and people are going to use it, and somehow along the way we'll find who pays for it. So I'm still in the process of trying to figure out who will pay for it. But yeah, so that's pretty much, yeah.
But in the meantime, those who are accessing what you provide are being enabled to have not just an export market to the EU, but to meet the standards potentially for other markets.
Yes, absolutely, because the concept is the same, that you need to identify who the players in the chain are. And you need to identify the processes, and you need to ensure that if you're making claims on your label, if you're saying you're organic, how do you substantiate the claims? How do I substantiate that, my product is gluten-free? How do I substantiate fair trade, for example? Because then we can all go and stick labels on products and kind of market them. So, it opens up, and with globalization, it opens up, all of a sudden the company, you can pretty much look at the global market, not just constrained to this market, but use that as a way to then get into new markets. So yes, you're very right, that it then opens up a whole new conversation around brand, around marketing around sustainability. So we've now moved from fighting to keep the market to how do we blow this up if you're doing the right thing. And those are the type of brands that we want to work, the ones that actually recognize that, if I have transparency in my supply chain, then I have a much better chance of surviving. Yeah.
So Comfort, you have managed to go from that idea to that very small enterprise to being a major exporter to Japan and the United States, which is quite remarkable. I remember one day when you were speaking to a group of ministers from around Africa, and particularly to her own countrymen, and explained the nature of her business, and basically stated the message that through nothing that they had achieved to make it easier, she was able to prevail. And essentially, what that meant to the local economy, that they, as the chief responsible agents in their country, were supposed to be growing. So how did you get to creating a major export business? I know you have all of these powers of observation and perseverance, but what did it take? We know that, for example, for the United States, there is a preference called AGOA, the Africa Growth Opportunity Act. One of the things women entrepreneurs are rarely able to do well is take advantage of these trade agreements. What enabled you to move into this space and advantage your business?
Thank you. Before I registered my company, I happened to, as I always look around for opportunities, I got a job in one of the biggest galleries in the country. And in fact, when I entered there, I quickly forgot about how much they pay me by the end of the month, because the experiences there were so rich. So I focus on what I can learn there if I decide to be on my own. And that place was my business school, practical business school, because I've not had opportunity to go to business school, but I'll still go. But I had the practical there. And that's open, is a gallery where people from all over the world comes to buy all the unique crafts. And you interact with them and know the qualities of things that they are looking for. So they are all information, okay, these people need this country, Japan, they're very specific, and you have to do this. If one person accepts your product, you are in business. If one person say no, you are out of business. So how do you get into all these people? And because my second mentor is a general manager of Ghana Export Promotion Council, I keep going. Anytime I'm off duty, I keep. Then one day, when I finally resigned, I went to him and said, I've resigned, I want to be on my own. He said, okay, next week we are having export school. So go and sign up and join. So I've been through the process. A week after I resigned from work, and then I got a shop. Then my spirit was straight into exports. Who is going to come my way for me to be able to talk to them about what I can sell to them? And in 2000, the former President Clinton initiated the AGWA, because those days, the duty of exporting make it difficult. And even when your product gets there, it makes it very expensive.
The costs were too high.
Yes. So the AGWA was actually launched 2000 in Ghana, and I was there when it was launched. Little did I know how I'm going to benefit it, but just because I'm always looking around to see what is happening where, I happen to be there and take note of it. Because my first export was 1999, and that went through an agent. But it's something I want to have the direct contact with my buyers. So for all the lessons that I learned from there, helped me to start looking for my own market. And I moved from the jewelry to handicraft. This, my mentor, helped me to develop a new product, because anybody who comes to ask me, do you have this mask, drums, this? I'll say yes. Then I'll go to him and said, they said drum and mask. What are the names of the wood? Because the next question is, that's what they are going to ask me. How long would it take to dry? How long would the ship get there? And what is the documentation? What document will you send to me? So I'll say yes, but I'll get back to you. Then I'll go to him to tell me what are this question. Then I'll be ready for you next time and give you details of it. And that will give you the courage that, yes, I can deliver. So this is what I've been doing. So I added baskets, drums, mask, whatever to it. And Japanese market is a very difficult one, but I was able to break through exporting, shipping things in 40, 20-footer containers. And it's amazing, the people who were in the export before me say, how did you break into the Japanese market? And then I continue with the US. When I got the Shea, it came to a point when the handicrafts exporting was going down, and I started looking somewhere else, and someone came to me and said, they need a shea butter from Japan. Ooh.
Another idea.
Another idea. So I called this mentor again. I said, somebody said he needs shea butter. What should I tell them? He said, okay, you get the shea butter for them and let's go. I mean, let them go, and you come, we talk. So they took the shea butter, the sample away, and left. So I have now go to educate myself, learn about shea butter. And today, the shea butter sample that I give to people, those people, as a sample, I can only use it for soap today. It can never be cream because the FFA level was so high that you can never use it for cosmetics.
So did you need capital to finance all these sequential businesses?
I need capital, but the rate is so high that I ended up working for nothing. And even when you take the loan and you are not able to sell at the time that you have to pay, it's rather make it very difficult. So I have been operating at a certain level. So from the beats, whatever I get from there, the growth of the business was my passion.
You plowed everything back into the businesses.
Everything goes back into the business. Because what I normally tell people that when you start a business, it's like giving birth to a child. And if you don't feed that child, you have abnormal child. You are not giving the person the right nutrition to grow. So whatever I get from my business, I reinvest back. Whether teaching, it goes back to a particular material. Is it training? I put it back. Whatever comes in. So the growth of the business was my focus. I just want to see.
And that was what you kept investing.
That's what I kept investing until I met one buyer who I was introduced to by the West Africa Trade Hub then. You know, when I got the shea butter, and I know that this thing is for women, they pick the nuts and they go through challenges and they process it and they don't have any market. I just feel like, okay, let me front this thing and sell it so that these women can be working every day and getting something. So at that time, we have our trade minister is a woman from the northern region. Then I went back to my mentor and said, you know, this woman is from the north, and it's her people who are picking the nuts, and they need somebody to help them. So we are going to make a big noise about this thing. I'm going to look for funding and launch this thing, put it in the papers so that she will come. If she's there, the papers, the media will follow her, and this woman will people will get to know about them. So I did that. Little did I know that the USAID was in the system just at that time, and they had their technical trainee there, and somebody at that same hotel, and somebody took my contact from the product and sent it to them that this thing that you say you are coming to train people, somebody is already doing it. So get her number and contact her. And so they called me, I went there, and they started working with me. When the labels I put on it, I thought they were great. But to go into the international market, you don't need people's faces and the wording and the colors and all those things. So they came and said, Comfort, you know what, you've done well, but you come down and listen to us, and we will help you to get somebody to design a label for you that can compete in the international market. So that was what they did. And
you've succeeded.
Yes.
So let's go back to land rights, because this is such a tough issue, but there have also been successes in this space. And what have you at Landisa found that works best to enable women to be able to get land tenure rights for the first time, or to own property directly, own land directly?
Well, we have found that, one, because land rights are gendered, one must first understand the gender relations within a particular context before proposing, recommending a strategy for addressing the gap in the law and the practice of it. And the challenges are interrelated. So for instance, maybe I'll give you an example to see some of the things that have worked for us in the field. So if you're looking at inheritance, for instance, inheritance is very important for women's land rights because it's the main mode of transferring land or acquiring land. And in most of the places where we work, it's governed by customary law, which in most places, again, tends to be patriarchal, and so favors men, sorry. Definitely doesn't favor women. We'd hope.
One day.
Right, so because it favors men, if you come up with a statutory provision, for instance, that says a separate property clause, it would be an example of this, where you say a person comes into a marriage, they retain rights to the property they bring into a marriage. Now, on the surface, this sounds like it's a very gender-neutral provision. But in practice, in a patriarchal society where you have patrilocal residence patterns, which mean that the wife will move to her husband's residence at the time of marriage, she's not likely now to inherit from her natal family because they perceive her as one who's going to be leaving the village. And then if you have a separate property clause that excludes her from accessing the land that her husband has, she's going to be landless in this situation. So one strategy or intervention that has worked for us is to recommend an exception for matrimonial property, and then include joint certification, and also require spousal consent for transferring that land. This has been one successful intervention. Women, even when the laws are in place, and I think we've made quite a bit of progress in terms of having the law in place, even though there are these sort of gendered implications that need to be refined. The major challenge that we've seen is in implementation. And part of that is because there's a gap between the law and the practice on the ground. So part of what we've been trying to do is sensitizing communities and working with communities to do so. Community conversation is one way that we've tried to do this and has been successful. And also identifying, there's a tendency sometimes to assume that customary systems don't have any gender-sensitive provision. That's not always the case. So starting out by trying to identify what works within a system and then building on that has been one successful strategy that we've employed in the past. Others have been to identify champions within a given society. So customary systems in general are the first recourse for women because they're accessible, they're socially acceptable, and so it's important that we work through that system as well. And so if you identify champions within the customary system as well as within the formal system, then you have people who can champion and advocate for women's land rights. So that's another approach that has worked. What else?
Are there any particularly successful interveners in getting some of these laws adopted, getting to the powers that be to persuade them that this is the right course?
Yeah, we work only by invitation. So we partner with governments. So usually when we approach it, there's a recognition that something has to change. It's not always the case that the gender piece is part of that, but it's part of the comprehensive way we approach law. And we always tell our government partners that we're seeking to secure the rights of the poor in a way that's gender sensitive as well. And there's that recognition that, like the multiplier effect, for instance, that is the instrumental argument has worked in situations where there's that recognition might not be where it needs to be on the part of our partners. But we've also, like I said, we're invited. So in many situations, we do find that governments are also receptive to it, but it's just that gap between what's in the books and what's out there in reality.
Let's turn to all of you and your questions. There are roving mics. Anybody who wants to make a comment or ask a question, just tell us your name and who you're associated with. Questions down here? Here and here? Right here?
Hello, my name is Lisa Nash. I run a nonprofit in safe drinking water called Blue Planet Network. And I would love to know, particularly from our two women business successes, what are your plans for the next 5 years? Where do you want to be?
Who wants to go first? Rose?
Yeah.
This is ambition.
Yeah.
So where do you want to be? Do you have other markets you want to conquer? Do you have?
Yes, in 5 years, I want to have about my own branded name. You know, I sell to private label companies. So I would like to have my own brand out there in the
That's real
international
ambition.
market. And to also add a spa to, not at the present, we have a land somewhere that we have a dream of building a spa to the shea manufacturing.
I think one of the reasons her export works so well is because it's packaged beautifully, and it's a bunch of spa products,
Yes,
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 all kinds of
yes.
creams and soaps, and so
Yes.
now you want your own spa.
Yes, I want to have health, yeah. Yes. Yeah.
Rosemary?
Yes, the dreams are many and big, but if I was to, talk about the one that kind of keeps me up at night, that would be, I would like to build or at least have the biggest open source repository of information around products, free to use, free to share, that would make the decisions around buying the products that we do that much easier. So it's big, it's still out there, but it's a journey that I am walking towards. Yeah.
Was another question here?
Hi, Suzanne Beagle. I'm an impact investor that works on investing in women and girls and bringing more
Good
women
for you.
in as investors. So one question is, what kind of support, if any, have you gotten from women philanthropists, women investors? Are they showing up for you? Are you asking them to show up for you? What kind of help would you want them to provide? And is that starting to emerge in Africa, or even that support from outside of Africa for you?
Well, I haven't got any investor yet.
Maybe you'll leave the forum with one.
Yeah. If I get one, that would be perfect, because I just want this business to catapult to another level. And that would, we have, apart from the company itself, it came to a point where I was just enjoying reaching out to other people. So I feel like changing from company to NGO so that I can just do it. And someone said, oh, I thought you go continue the struggle and one day be among the big guys there. So what I did was, I had opportunity to be part of African Women Entrepreneurship Program. One of the things that I do out of the way, I just went somewhere in a village. When I'm tired in my business is when I think of what I can do somewhere else, which is different from. So I went somewhere to do some medical outreach to some 13 villages somewhere. And I was called from there that I have an email waiting for me. And when I came back, I was nominated to represent my country in the State Department. And when I came back, it's become more crazier than I thought I was doing. And now it's put me on the go. Every woman, even in traffic, I have to give woman a chance. And every woman, I mean, what is your problem? What is our problem? Let's put it together. What can we do? Who need a mentor? I mean, it's like crazy. And sometimes I'm in the country, all right. But when I come back to my business, it's like, oh, you are home once again. Because I'm just out there. People have issues, but how to really address it? They are so afraid. So I feel like we can knock on all these doors. So let's go. And people have issues, but it's like when you call people together to talk to them. There are some people, when they go out, yes, you've spoken, they've heard. So what next? They want one-on-one mentoring, that you can enter into them, not only in their business issue, but their private life. There are some people who only want somebody to listen to them, to pour out their heart, and they will go home free. And when we finished the AWEB program, we were introduced to Cherry Blair Foundation, where they have one-on-one mentoring for a whole year. And I really enjoy it, and I'm like, this is the best program, one-on-one mentoring.
And they tweeted about you today.
Oh, wow.
That you were going to be here.
So what I'm doing now is I keep bringing all the women together. Anytime we have webinar or whatever, I invite them to come and listen to the people who are making it out there. They are sharing their experiences. Though they should come and be part of it. And I try to, the little that I can do, I made some of them, encourage them. One challenge that women have in their businesses is the technology. People are not computer friendly. And they shy away from it. Somebody will have an iPad, but still go to the cafe and ask somebody to help them to access their email. So I try to select at least 10 of them to enter into the Cherry program. And they keep calling. I say, yes, you have to be on the internet and do this thing. You have to be computer friendly and do it. If you are not doing what you are doing, you have to do in your business. Somebody will come and tell you what to do. And you always be pushed around. Right. So you have to be on top of whatever you are doing.
So mentoring's very important.
It's very, very important. And
you're still waiting for the investors.
I'm still waiting for the investors.
But validation is important too. I think the fact that she was in this program then changed her stature at home in terms of greater interest in the business. Do you want to add anything to the investor question?
Yes, I mean, it's pretty much this investors, particularly early days, and especially if they do not see a return on investment fairly, it's not clear. Your business model is not as clear as they would like it to be, is difficult. But then that's not to say that things stop. And, you know, this is where diversification comes in. You know, for example, I've had to kind of do different things. You know, you talked about training. So we do a lot of training programs. We work with, you know, we get support from the pesticide initiative program just to go out and train producers, farmers, you know, consulting, you know, just so that we can keep the traceability and supply chain transparency on the table. Because it's easy to kind of say, okay, well, this is never going to make any money and let's stop doing that. But there has been ways. So it's difficult finding investors when your business model is not as clear-cut, shillings and dollars, tomorrow, now. So that's obviously a challenge which we're still trying to work around. And you do need the money, especially if you're going to scale. So, you know, it's a chicken and egg kind of...
it's a tough
it's a tough challenge. I support what she says about networks, especially women. Networking and supporting each other. I'm also familiar with AWEP, also from within Kenya. Also part of an organization called the African Women in Agribusiness Network. Again, what networks and you know, mentorship environments do is that within that, there's always somebody who's gone through it, through what you're just trying to start, that can tell you, wait a minute, if you take that turn, you're going to fall flat on your face. You know, so take this turn. Mentorship, you know, I was privileged last year to be part of a really amazing program, which I also learned that our moderator this afternoon was part of the foundation of. It's called the Tech Women Program, a US state-funded program. I was one of the lucky women from Africa and the Middle East to go to the Silicon Valley for a month and a half for mentorship, which again just opens a whole other, you know, platform of connecting and sharing. And you begin to see yourself, you know, I would hear people talking about what I was doing in new and interesting ways, and I would go like, I do that? Yeah. So it's very, very powerful. And I think if we can, you know, begin to really think about how to measure and how to increase some of those platforms and networks, then, you know, we're pretty much in the right track, yeah.
Good. We just have a few minutes left. Anybody else there?
Hi, I'm Maura O'Neill, and thanks to the Skoll Forum for doing this panel and for this awesome, every one of you are incredible. One of the challenges we have in the US and others is having to take the moniker of the title, Entrepreneurial Ambition. We often have women that don't think big enough, and they don't think about the types of businesses. And so what do we do on that? So it's access to capital, it's a lot of things, but now I'm talking about women believing that it's possible to build big, powerful, important businesses in their country. What advice do you have, or what do you think we can do to change that?
Good question. You want to say anything about that?
No, it's so interesting. I was at the Andy event earlier in the week, and we had this same conversation, Maura, where we were talking about, you know, small and growing businesses, and that women are so clustered on the small, and so the women-led businesses, and that, you know, there's sort of the small and beautiful, and what is it about that? You know, I think what I took away from that conversation is that the mentorship and the networking where they're absolutely critical, that the sort of modeling and being able to see it having been done, and that you have to sort of, you know, the work that we're all doing to shine a light on examples and things like this. And that also, you know, as a financial partner, going early, you know, and being in there. I mean, this is such a challenge. It was the big challenge that was mentioned at this Andy meeting, was the continued underserving of that earlier stage market, and we have got to continue to get together. And what was sort of an inspiration was some of actual sort of new financing vehicles coming out of that to try. I mean, Jan is leading the part of the charge on that, and that is just absolutely essential. We can't just sit at the upper end and be frustrated by deal flow. So we have to go earlier and provide the suite of tools. So that's just my perspective.
I think that's true. Do either of you entrepreneurs want to address that?
Well,
you're very ambitious.
yeah, we all know that's the problem with we women. And what we did on the 8th of March to celebrate ourselves there, we have placards said, women be bold and step out. We are the rock. We are sustainable. We are the heart of our economy. If you can think it, you can birth it. We are the rock. And we have all sorts of things that we put around, and we walk throughout the country holding it up, that women should come out. This is who you are. Let's come out. There's nothing that you cannot do. We are sustainable. I remember when we were at the 2010, Mrs. Clinton said that if the world said women are not the highest contributor, one day women should go on strike.
Right.
The whole world will, the whole world will become standstill. Nothing will move. Well, so we are movers.
Well, what actually happened was Secretary Clinton was traveling in Africa. I won't say which country. This was before she became secretary. And there was a minister opining about the fact that women have no role in the economy of his country. And she said, wait a minute. And we were in a van, and she looked out one side, the other side. It was women as far as the eye could see, in the fields, bent over, doing all of the hard work. And she said, you know, sir, these women stopped for one day, your country would stop.
Yes, yes.
So I think that always has a profound impact on some of the listeners who really can identify with what goes on. One more question, comment from anybody. Oh, I'm sorry, Rosemary.
No, I just wanted to add on a little bit onto what you know, her question around, you know, what else could be done. I think there's a place for accelerators, just specifically targeting women, and you know, and it's two-way. To pretty much sieve through the ideas and to help them develop those ideas. I mean, I could have used the help, for example, when I was starting, in terms of, you know, if you positioned this way and if you did this, then maybe, you would have a better chance of, so instead of spending 4 or 5 years kind of trying to figure it out, if there was that help, so I think there's a space for incubators, accelerators that specifically, focus on women. And I don't think that there are many of those out there. No. Obviously, the work that Root Capital is doing is fantastic, but I think that there could be more. And obviously, the work with Landesa is beautiful, but I think there could be more in terms of business service support. Sieving the ideas, helping through the ideas, and channeling them also towards, so now this is ready for Root Capital. This is not ready for, and business plan. This is ready for this. This is, so you come in and do this. So I think it's that ecosystem. I think there is a huge space for something like that.
Good.
Yeah.
I think there was one in the back.
Hi, my name is Maria Rosa Galter, and I work in Tanzania. We mentor girls. So if you could speak to, or if you could look back at your 15-year-old self, what are the skills, what is the knowledge, what is the inspiration that you would have liked to have received when you were 15 years old?
In that sense, I was lucky because I had the inspiration that I needed. My mother, I always say that I went to the International University of my mother. I think she's the main reason why I got into, the whole business. She was a civil servant, she resigned involuntarily. There was the World Bank program that was asking people to take money and, go do business. But then it turned out to be a good thing because, I told her, Mom, you look much happier these days than you were working. And so I watched her growing her business. She was making women's clothes and, I began to think, oh, wow, this is actually, and, she's making a bit more money than she was. So, in a sense, it has to do with parents. That's at least what I'm trying to say. So I was lucky in that sense that I had a very, very excellent role model in my mother, which we don't have necessarily at that age. Maybe it's a different experience.
Sure. I mean, it wasn't quite 15, but 17. When I was 17, my father died very suddenly, and so I, as a young woman, got to witness the sort of really the emergence of my mother as the head of the household. I'm sure that's other people share that story, but really being someone who I think had quite given that over to my father, and I trace back my role in thinking about or my passion for the money part of this, I think, to that moment, and seeing what it was like for her to do that as a mature woman with 2 children. And I think if I think about my career, it's about just women owning their seat at a table in a financial conversation. And for many years, I was sort of a financial coach to boards of nonprofits, and it's shocking. To this day, you go into a conversation, and women will lean away from the table when they start talking about the financing. They will cede that conversation to their male colleagues. And I think the power of being a woman. I mean, I cannot balance my checkbook, right? Like I'm not a financial person, but I am a big believer in the ownership that you have to have over a financial conversation as a head of household, as just a participant in the economy. You can't give that conversation away to anybody else. So that's what I would have said to myself at 15.
Okay, Hirut and Catherine and Rosemary and Comfort, thank you all so much, not just for today, but for what you do every day. And to all of us here, may we continue to support extraordinary people like this in their work all we can.